There's an epidemic of organized retail theft in America, or at least that's what we're being told in the news. And there are tons of viral social media posts showing groups of people brazenly stealing products from retail stores in broad daylight, with retail stores even supposedly closing down because of the increase in general retail theft. Yet recently, one of the executives of Walgreens has come out and said that perhaps the claims of the rise in shoplifting was overstated, and that blaming the shutdown of 5 of its stores in San Francisco due to the rise in retail theft might not have been too entirely accurate. So what exactly is going on here, and is organized retail theft and even retail theft in general getting as bad as some headlines are claiming it out to be? Well, first we need to understand where we are even getting this data about the rise of retail theft in the first place. When the industry talks about the rise of retail theft, what they're typically talking about is shrinkage, which is a term used to mean loss of inventory that can be attributed to factors such as employee theft, shoplifting, administrative error, vendor fraud, damage, and cashier error. And already we have a problem, which is that the term shrinkage actually covers a lot of different reasons for inventory loss that isn't exclusive to shoplifting, which means that retail crime could be down, but the company could have problems with administrative errors or damaged goods, and these would still contribute to the increasing number of shrinkage. Now, the obvious solution to this is to just break down the shrinkage number and just look at the numbers of external retail theft. But the problem is that these companies are not very transparent about the details of the numbers either, because it will actually oftentimes make them look bad in the earning calls. What's even more confusing is that oftentimes shrinkage number is presented interchangeably with retail theft, with companies like Target and Walgreens citing shrinkage number to claim a massive increase in theft rather than the actual data of retail theft. Even mainstream media sources like CBS has been citing $100 billion in theft when that $100 billion is talking about shrinkage number, with only 5% of that likely actually representing external theft. This actually makes the situation related to organized retail theft and retail theft in general look way worse than it actually is, and it's no surprise that so many Americans think that this is a massive issue that is plaguing the United States. And there's actual real consequences to all this, specifically to the American people's psyche, which we will get to. But understand that the lack of transparency is what makes this whole thing difficult to figure out. When we look at National Retail Federation data, a federation that represents many retail industries and a commonly cited source for retail theft, even they stopped releasing the details of the data breakdown for 2019 to 2020. And when they finally did begin releasing the breakdown of the numbers again with the 2021 numbers, we see that the percentage of theft hasn't increased much at all, especially relative to 2017 numbers and before, with shrinkage number representing around 1.5% to 2% of retailer sale in recent years, a figure that is actually stable and most definitely not enough for it to justify closure of these stores according to experts. Now, in the very beginning of the video, I mentioned that Walgreens admitted that maybe blaming retail theft for closing down stores was a bit overstated, but this isn't the only example where there has been confusion about the topic of retail theft. For example, it's widely believed in some circles that Walmart had to shut down several of its Chicago stores after rise in theft and crime, likely something that people naturally assumed because Walmart has been complaining about retail theft for a while now. Yet Walmart themselves came out saying that many of these stores weren't doing so well since they've opened them 17 years ago, predating the supposed uncontrollable rise in retail theft. Then we have companies like Lowe's who blamed external theft as the main driver of shrinkage, despite it mostly being due to damaged goods from weather. In fact, companies that have been using the supposed rise in shoplifting and organized retail theft as the main culprit for the rise in shrinkage is a long list, and too much to actually cover in this video. Now, the reason why all this actually matters is because this narrative plays into the demoralization of the American people, fueling distrust for each other, fueling racial tensions, and deepening political divisions. And all this is being done in order to protect the interests of few corporations and their bottom line. Experts have pointed out that this tactic of blaming rise of retail theft is a convenient way for companies to blame retail theft on their operational loss without putting too much attention on other issues that might be affecting the business. And these retail companies are actually leveraging this by putting pressure on online retailers like Amazon, who is actually likely one of the main forces behind the decline of profits in these places like Walmart and Target, by lobbying bills that specifically put burden on online sellers from opening shop on Amazon and other online retailers. Essentially, the everyday Americans are unknowingly being caught up in a war for market share and profit of mega corporations, and they are paying the price for it by allowing this to affect political discourse and tearing Americans apart. And this is the real consequence, and this is why it matters. And what is worse is that this actually makes it really hard to have actual conversations about real issues that does plague American society. Like the fact that criminals can actually brazenly steal things and not get in trouble for it because some cities in America have decided to turn the other way and allow criminality to go unpunished. and the fact that vast majority of these thefts are being done by a couple of repeat offenders and not your average everyday hardworking Americans of all different backgrounds. Instead of talking about problems like these, people like myself or you who is watching is now forced to have a conversation about whether or not retail theft is overblown or even real, which feels like it's downplaying the whole topic of retail theft in general. It is taking away our time to have actual productive conversation about things that actually matter. Additionally, the focus on the rise of retail theft is also a way for companies to brush off other important conversations like stagnant wages, which has been affecting many of these retail workers, because companies could in theory just blame the rise in retail theft and the deterioration of safety of these workers as the reasons for why so many people are quitting, and not the stagnant wages on top of rising cost of living that makes it just not worth it to work in retail anymore. There is also the lack of conversation about jobs being lost by many of these companies replacing retail workers with automation and self-checkout machines, which is also likely what contributed to the supposed slight increase in shrinkage in the first place. And ultimately, it's always the everyday working class who are the foundations of our society that is being shafted in these conversations. Now, I won't go as far to say that some of these videos of stores with toothbrushes locked behind glass display cases as some kind of viral campaign by these corporations to play into the narrative, because chances are in some communities, some stores might have actually had a large uptick in retail theft. But by no means does this represent the trend that is happening in America. And some of these companies have stated that part of their evidence for their belief in rise of retail theft comes from signals, like news reporting and commentary from other retailers, which social media likely plays a part in shaping those beliefs. You also need to remember that there is a demand for these types of video you see on social media because it gets clicks, and that the proliferation of smartphones and surveillance camera makes the capturing of these moments even more common, which makes the situation look a lot worse and a lot more widespread than it actually is. And this is all despite the fact that there's a very good chance that if you're watching this from the United States, that your local Walmart or Target isn't going to have toothbrushes behind locked display cases. Stories like these are actually a lot bigger deal than you think, because ideas like these continue to add up little by little to create the grand narrative of the terminal American decline, as the overblown news fueled by desire for social media views and protection of corporate interests continues to tear the fabric of American society. And when I look at news like this, I see a symptom of actually a much bigger issue that is plaguing America, which is that a lot of destructive tendencies in the United States are actually coming from within, who are much more focused on self-interest rather than the interests of the nation and its people. So it's important that if you are watching this, that you stick to the data and truth, and do not get caught up in this emotional roller coaster that attempts to bait you through rage, to have faith in the American people and diligently address existing issues in the country one by one. I hope that this video gave you insight into how the working class people can be manipulated to distrust each other, and how it's important to take a step back and really examine whether what you're seeing online is really what is happening, because chances are things are way more than what meets the eyes.